Good morning all. In the last class we have discussed the different classification of crystalline defects or imperfections, starting from the point defects and ending in the bulk defects or the volume defects. So we know like there are certain inherent defects which is taking place inside the materials or the solid materials, and how these defects are getting affected when we are subjecting this particular solid material for a plastic deformation process or a shape changing process. Okay, in the previous classes we have discussed the various factors which are affecting the plastic deformation process or shape changing process, which include the crystal structure of the materials. In crystal structure, we know the BCC material and HCP materials, they have a inherent brittleness property because of their crystal structure, and the FCC material, face centered cubic structure, are having very good ductility or plastic deformation property. The major reason accounting for that is the available number of slip systems for the FCC material. So BCC and HCP materials are lacking the slip systems, so plastic deformation is very less. FCC materials are having sufficient amount of slip systems. Again, the plastic deformation also depends upon the grain size of the material and the type of the materials, and also the strain rate induced in the material when the external force is applied. Also, two important factors apart from these we discussed last time is the presence of the crystalline defects and also the presence of dislocations. We know dislocations can be also considered as one among the crystal defects. So if the material is possessing certain crystal defects like vacancies or some foreign impurity atom presence, and also if it is having certain dislocations like edge dislocations or screw dislocation, how these dislocations or the presence of vacancy or the point defects are getting affected on the plastic deformation process or the slipping of the atoms. Okay. Before going in detail into this, we are just considering one type of dislocation. We can say it is the edge dislocation. We already discussed edge dislocation is a particular type of dislocation which happens due to the presence of an extra plane of atoms inside the crystalline material, which terminates within the crystalline material. So this plane will not be complete. It may be a half plane or a 3/4 plane. It will not be a complete plane of atoms. So there will be an extra plane of atoms which is terminating within the crystal structure, which is the edge dislocation. Consider the figure. The figure actually consists of an extra plane of atom, so it is having an edge dislocation. And also in the figure B, we can say it consists of an extra plane of atom. At the same time, it consists of a vacancy defect also. So near to the extra plane of the atom, the bottom atom, we have a adjacent to the bottom atom or to the right of the bottom atom, we can observe there is a vacancy, which is again another type of defect, which is a point defect. So it is actually a combination of both. It consists of an edge dislocation, which is a line defect. Also it consists of a zero dimensional defect, which is a vacancy or a point defects. So actually it is a combination of both. So in such case, if a vacancy plus edge dislocation exists in a material, or adjacent to a edge dislocation, we can observe a vacancy. And if we are deforming the material, or if we are externally applying a deforming force, a compressive force or tensile force to the material, how these particular dislocations as well as the vacancy which is behaving upon applying that external force. Okay. When a compressive loading or a compressive force acts upon such a material, the material will be subjected to a compressive stress, which will create the movement of this particular atom from the edge dislocation portion or the edge dislocation plane. The atom at the bottom will be transferred to the place where there is a vacancy of the atom. So from the position where at the bottom of the edge dislocation, the atom will be moving towards the vacant position. So atom will be occupying a newer position, which means there is a shortage in the number of atoms in the edge dislocation plane. A atom is missing from the edge dislocation planes. Such a case, we can say the edge dislocation is moving a little upward. Upward in the sense one atom is missing from its actual position, so that the lower end or the terminating end of the edge dislocation has been reduced. So we can say a movement of edge dislocation towards the top region. Also it is termed as climb up. it is a technical term which is climb up process or the climb up of the edge dislocation. It is actually happening in the material when nearby we have a two defect. One is a linear defect and also a vacancy defect. Both is present in the same material. At the same time, it is subjected to a compressive force. So climb up process takes place when a compressive stress perpendicular to the extra half plane or the edge plane of the atoms takes place, which results in the dislocation climb up. So this particular process is termed as dislocation climb up. Similarly, we also have a dislocation climb down process in which the reverse process takes place. We have a edge dislocation, which means an extra plane of atoms, and also we have a vacancy that is created due to the movement of atoms and joining the edge dislocation. This particular phenomena happens when we are applying the opposite type of loading, which is a tensile loading. So the particular material which is having a edge dislocation, if you are, it is having only an edge dislocation, so inherently vacancy is not present. So what will happen is when we are applying a tensile force, the neighboring atoms near to the bottom plane or the bottom layer of the edge dislocation, the atom will try to join that particular plane of atoms, or the atom will try to join the edge dislocation plane when a tensile force is applied or when it is experiencing a tensile stress. As a result, the size of the number of atoms in the dislocation plane or the edge dislocation plane will be increasing, which actually results in the moment of edge dislocation a unit downwards. So upon the tensile loading, an atom from the neighboring position, it will be moving and it will be joining the edge dislocation plane. So the size of the edge dislocation plane is getting increased. As a result, it will be moving one unit downwards. Such process is termed as dislocation climb down. So previously it was dislocation climb up. This is dislocation climb down. As a result of this, a second vacancy or a point defect is created. So it will result in a vacancy in the neighboring side. So the climb down results in the movement of a dislocation downward. Also it will create a vacancy of atom. Okay. Next we will discuss the effect of this dislocation upon the plastic deformation of the material, whether the dislocation will aid in the plastic deformation or whether it is restrict the plastic deformation. This particular phenomena, whether the plastic deformation is made easier or it is restricted, it actually depends upon the quantity of dislocations present in the material, or in another term we can call it as the dislocation density. Dislocation density actually accounts for the amount of dislocation present in a crystalline material. Okay, so under normal condition we can see the dislocation will always help in the movement of plastic deformation, or always try to assist the plastic deformation, because already material is subjected to an external force. Again, if the material is having lot of defects, it means that these defects will also tends to help in the slipping of the atoms or the plastic deformation process. So under normal condition, dislocation will assist the movement of atoms. Next we will discuss how this dislocation will help in movement or plastic deformation of the atoms. Okay, we already know plastic deformation mechanism. Mainly in any material, the plastic deformation takes place either due to slipping action or due to twinning, and in most material the main reason for the plastic deformation, it is due to the plastic deformation by slipping of atoms. And slipping of atoms, actually it means the atoms will be moving relative to each other on different planes when an external force is applied to the atom. So there is a relative movement of atoms between different planes, which is actually observed as slipping of atoms. Okay, in such a way the material will get plastically deformed. Okay, consider a particular lattice structure as shown in the figure. First figure, we know we are having different atoms, and all the points represents the lattice points of these particular atoms, in which we are considering a plane which is highlighted in a blue color, which is actually a through plane. It is a complete plane of atoms in which atoms are very orderly arranged. Okay, in that particular plane we know we are having a partial plane which is situated at the end, left end of the particular lattice. We are having a plane which is not a complete plane, which is terminating within the crystal structure. So we can consider it as a edge dislocation. By definition, we know edge dislocations are dislocation taking place in the material when an extra plane of atom is present in the material which is terminating within the crystal structure. So the ends at the edge we are having a edge dislocation. In applying stress, if this particular crystal system, if we are applying stress, a sufficient amount of shear stress, it is subjected to a particular amount of shear stress, we know upon application of the shear stress, when the shear stress inside the material, if it crosses the critical threshold shear stress, the plastic deformation will takes place in the material. That is the phenomena of plastic deformation by slip, and that particular value of shear stress we normally used to call it as critical threshold shear stress. So we are subjecting this particular system or the lattice to a shear stress. So when it is receiving the sufficient amount of shear stress, the material will tends to slip or it tends to deform plastically. Okay, so what will happen when we are subjecting a shear stress to the particular material? Upon application of the sufficient shear stress, what will happen is these particular atoms or the edge dislocation, it will tends to move depending upon the magnitude of the shear stress. So it will initially move from left side to the nearby adjacent plane. So what actually happens is when it tends to move from left side to adjacent plane, it try to join with the atoms at the below of the adjacent plane, which means it will try to join the atoms in the neighboring plane, and in this way from one position to another, the atoms, this particular edge dislocation atoms will be moving. So the extra plane of atom or a half plane of atom will be moving from one end, the P end to the Q end, the extreme left end to extreme right end. It will be transferred when it is subject to an external force or external stress. Okay, so this is the process, or this is the process taking place when we are subjecting a particular lattice which is containing an edge dislocation to an external shear stress. So when the stress is applied, the edge dislocation will be moved from one region to another region. As a result, this movement of dislocation will result at the end, it will be creating a projection at the right end. Initially, you know, we had a projection at the extreme left end. That particular projection or that particular edge of atoms or edge plane of atoms, it is actually moved to the extreme right end. So actually when we are considering the material as a whole, we are having or we are experiencing a plastic deformation or a shape change of the material. So actually the dislocation also is moved from one region to another. So hence the dislocation can help or it can aid in the in the movement of the atoms or slipping of the atoms, which finally result in the plastic deformation. That's why initially I told the plastic deformation can be increased or enhanced when we are having a sufficient number of deformation or dislocation present inside the material. Okay, this is analogous to the movement of a caterpillar. We know from one atom to neighboring atom, it is moving like a caterpillar movement. So it is analogous to the movement of the caterpillar. In this way, the dislocation or the edge dislocation plane, it is moving from one side to one extreme end to next extreme end. Next, we will discuss the different sources of these dislocations. Okay, we know by dislocation, or we know the examples for the dislocation: edge dislocation, screw dislocation, or the combination of the two, which is called as mixed dislocations, where dislocations are originating or where we can find this dislocation inherently. So these are certain conditions where we can consider as the sources of dislocation or origin of the dislocation. First one is the irregularities presence in the grain boundary, okay, which is called as grain boundary step, which is the projections of the grain boundaries or some undulations seen in the grain boundaries. So grain boundary ledges or steps are acting as a irregularities of the grain boundary or projections of the grain boundary that can act as a dislocation, either edge dislocation or the screw dislocation. And another one is stress raises present in the material, whether we are having certain defects, surface defects over the material, or whether we are having certain sharp edges in the material, or some shape change or some surface undulations seen in the material. These small stress regions can act as stress raisers, and these sharp edges in the material, they can act as stress raisers. They can also act as the source or the origin of the dislocation. Another one is the presence of vacancies. There are certain regions inside the material where large number of vacancies are present. In normal condition, it will be distributed differently. Under certain stress or under certain condition, this vacancy may comes together and they can collapse to form a larger vacancy. They can also act as the origin of the dislocation. Okay. Another source is the presence of the second phase particles. Okay, during it occurs during the nucleation process or the solidification process. The presence of the second phase can also act as the origin of the dislocation. Another origin is the phase transformation. Okay, the phase transformation process which is taking place during solidification or with the help of the temperature change. In many materials, we know polymorphism exhibiting materials, there is a shape change when we are, or not shape change, there is a change in the phase, okay, when we are subjecting to the temperature. So the phase transformation also can result as the source of dislocation. Next topic is the multiplication of dislocation. So we already discussed different sources of dislocation, what actually a dislocation means, edge dislocation, screw dislocation. So next is one topic where how these dislocations are getting multiplied within a material. So there is one important, very well-known concept for the which shows how these dislocations are getting multiplied, which is known as Frank-Read source of the dislocation. It is the mechanism by which the dislocation multiply when it is subjected to an external force or during a plastic deformation. Okay, for the sake of understanding, we are considering a particular dislocation or a segment of dislocation, a small portion of a dislocation, and we are naming it as a AB. So the particular linear segment, it actually represents a dislocation, and its length actually it extends from A to B, and length we are naming it as L. L is the length of the dislocation. So, and we are for the sake of analysis, we are pinning this dislocation at A as well as B, which means it is pinned at point A and it is pinned at point B. So it cannot move from position A and from position B, but other regions of the particular dislocation segment, it is free to move upon the external force. So such conditions exist in the material where the dislocations are actually pinned at certain locations, or it is not free to move at certain points. Okay, so we are considering a dislocation segment which is AB of length L, and when an external shear stress is acting upon this particular dislocation segment or dislocation portion of line, then what will happen actually? So depending upon the external stress, this particular segment of line or dislocation will tends to bend. Okay, so depending upon the direction of this particular stress, it will try to bend down or try to bow down. As a result, the radius or the curvature is getting increased for this particular dislocation line. So it will try to become a curve. So this curvature is getting increased, and as a result, but still it is pinned at point A as well as point B. Subjected to point A and B, it is becoming a curve. From linear fashion, it is getting more curved. So this process takes place depending upon the externally applied shear stress. As long as the shear stress is applied, this process continues, and at one point what will happen is this curvature increases, and this bending will takes place. So it will be pinned around the points A and B, as you can see in the figure 4 and 5. In the second row, you can see it will be bending across, or it will be bending across the points A and B internally. It will tend to curve inside, and at one point what will happen is this dislocation from the 2 points will try to meet each other, which can be observed at the last figure, and as a result what will happen is a loop is formed. So if you are considering the outer loop, you can see a linear dislocation, it is getting curved, and it will be converting to a loop, and it will be detached from the initial points, and as a result a new dislocation is formed at A and B, and the previous dislocation it is forming a loop outside. Okay, so again in the next figure we will be getting a little more clarity. The same process we will be starting from initial. So initially we will be considering a particular segment of dislocation present inside a material or a particular rectangular block. Consider it as a crystalline lattice. Inside we will be having a dislocation line or a portion of dislocation line. So it will be pinned at two end points, and we will be applying a shear stress. Depending upon the direction of shear stress, it will be trying to bend along that particular direction of applied shear stress. So a curvature is formed. Upon continuing the shear stress, this curvature increases, and you can see at the point 4 the curvature increases in such a that it tends to loop around its own at the points, and at one point you can see at figure 5 this will tends to touch each other and it will be detached from the initial position, which means it will be trying to form a loop, but at center again a new dislocation is formed. So we can see a loop of dislocation is formed, and inside again a new dislocation is formed. This particular phenomena is called as generation of dislocation or Frank-Rudd source of dislocation, or we can say multiplication of dislocation. Okay, this particular concept is called as Frank-Rudd source of dislocation or multiplication of dislocation. Okay, so if we are analyzing one by one, we can see upon the initial condition we are assuming a segment of moving dislocation which is pinned at point A and B, which is the figure 1. Okay, we have the length. So when we are applying a shear stress which causes the segment to bend or bow between these 2 points A and B, and the shear stress is proportional to the GB by R, where G is the modulus of rigidity or the shear modulus, B is the Berger vector, and R is the radius of the curvature. In the next condition, you can see the shear stress, it is proportional to GB by L, where G is the modulus of rigidity, B is the Berger vector, L is the length of the dislocation, and this curvature increases in a such that it will be trying to bend around the points A and B, and at finally it will tends to this loop tends to complete, and that particular length of the dislocation is trying to form a loop and will be joined at the form, and at the same time a new dislocation is formed at the point A and B, in between the points A and B, so which is a new dislocation which earlier was not existing. Actually it is a part of the earlier dislocation. Okay, so this loop continues to grow. The new dislocation will be repeated when the applied stress is sufficient or it is still persisting inside the material. So depending upon this applied stress, again this process or this particular phenomena will be continuing, and new dislocation will be arising from the same position in such a way, and as a result a loop of dislocations or a group of dislocation will be created or originating from the same source itself. Okay. Next comes the concept of the dislocation forest. So don't confuse this with the dislocation Frank-Rudd dislocation sources. It is different from the dislocation forest. So dislocation forest, actually it means it is a group of dislocations or a number of dislocations which are moving one behind another over the actual slip lanes. So we will be having a group of dislocation. That's why it is called the name dislocation forest. We will be having a group of dislocation which is moving one behind another along the slip lanes, along the active slip lanes, okay, along the slip directions. So, and if these group of dislocations are getting hindered or it is getting blocked at certain regions inside the material, or these dislocation forests are getting intersecting each other, this will result in to another type of structures which is called as jocks and kinks. So jocks and kinks are actually formed when the dislocation movement or a forest of dislocations are getting intersecting each other, which results in the restricted movement of the dislocation. So what exactly kinks and jocks means? Actually kinks and jocks are actually dislocations, but they are not complete dislocation, which means they are not through length dislocations, but they are short segments of dislocation which actually connects to other dislocations. Okay, so kinks and jocks are actually segments of dislocation lines that can connect to other dislocations. Then how this kinks and jock differs? Actually, King's actually is a connecting segment of dislocation which actually connects two particular dislocation which lies on the same slip planes. So actually two existing dislocation on the same slip plane, if it is connected with the help of a another connecting dislocation segment, that particular dislocation segment or short portion of dislocation line is called as kink. Then jogs are again, it is a segment of dislocation or a segment of dislocation line that actually connect two dislocation line which acts on different planes or two parallel planes. Okay, so kinks as well as jogs are actually small short segments of dislocation which is formed when two dislocations or a group of dislocation getting intersected each other, and these actually differs in the sense when in the case of kink it lies on the same planes, the dislocations are lies on the same plane which is connected using the kink. In the case of jogs, jog actually connect two dislocation lines which are lying on two parallel planes or different planes. Kinks as well as jogs are formed or are actually segments or portions of dislocation which are formed by intersection of a moving dislocation with other dislocations, or we can say they are formed due to the intersection of the dislocation forest. So, and jog is of edge dislocation nature. So, it is having a behavior like an edge dislocation which actually act perpendicular to the Berger vector. We already know Berger vector acts perpendicular for the edge dislocation. So, jog similarly will be perpendicular to the Berger vector. Similarly, kink is having a screw nature which acts parallel to the Berger vector. So till now we have discussed how these dislocations are helping in plastic deformation or how these dislocations are moving under an external applied stress. Okay, whether it is a dislocation, edge dislocation or screw dislocation, how it is affecting, and also the various sources of this dislocation and how these dislocations are getting multiplied by the help of the Frank-Rudd source of dislocation. Okay, next we will discuss how these dislocations are restricting the plastic deformation. Okay, we know what plastic deformation actually is. If you are saying a material is plastically deformable or it is easily deformable, which means the strength of the material is less. So plastic deformation, it is directly proportional to the ductility of the material. So restriction of the plastic deformation or opposite of the plastic deformation, we can consider it as the strength of the material. So by strength, what we actually means, it is the resistance to the plastic deformation or resistance to the ductility. So how these deformations or how these dislocations are restricting the movement of plastic deformation. In the first phase we have discussed how it is aiding or how it is helping the plastic deformation. In this case we will be discussing how the plastic deformation is getting restricted or the strength of the material, how it is getting improved. Okay, here comes the concept of the dislocation density. We have discussed this term already. So dislocation density actually accounts for the total number of dislocations present inside a material. So it can be considered as the dislocation length per unit volume inside the material. So how this dislocation density is enhanced or how it is decreased depending upon the different treatments. One very important treatment, normally we call it as strain hardening process or cold working process. So strain hardening process or cold working process, actually we will be deforming a material with the help of an external load or external stress. This particular deformation will actually increase the number of dislocations present inside the material. We know when we are deforming the material, the strength of the material is getting increased. That particular phenomenon is called as cold working or strain hardening. So cold working or strain hardening increases the dislocation density. That is one point. Another is how it is depending upon the temperature, this dislocation density. So it is not having any significant importance when the applied temperature or applied temperature is less than the recrystallization temperature. So the dislocation density normally remains constant for a temperature, operating temperature less than the recrystallization temperature. But when we are heating above the recrystallization temperature, okay, for the example, in the case of annealing heat treatment, we will discuss this in the later modules in detail. So annealing is one particular type of heat treatment where we are increasing the temperature of the material above the recrystallization temperature. In such case, the dislocation density is getting affected. So upon annealing heat treatment or when we are heating above the recrystallization temperature, dislocation density of the material is increased. So one point is we will be increasing the dislocation density by strain hardening the material. Second one is increasing by increasing the temperature above the recrystallization temperature. Okay. Then how this dislocation density is related to the strength of the material. So we know dislocation density actually means the number of dislocations present inside the material in the unit volume basis. Okay. So and by the strain hardening, what we means is actually it is increasing the strength of the material by applying the mechanical strain. So one point we can say the strength of the material is having an indirect relation with the moment of dislocation. So which means as the dislocation moment is increasing, we can observe that as the dislocation moment is increasing, easily material is plastically deformable, that we have discussed earlier. So when we are restricting the deformation or the moment of the dislocation, it actually means the mobility of the dislocation or the moment of the dislocation is decreased. So strength of the material increases as the moment of dislocation or the mobility of the dislocation is reducing. So strength is inversely proportional to mobility of dislocation. As the strength increases, mobility of dislocation decreases. Okay. So when the dislocation density increases, what will happen is by any process, either by strain hardening or by increasing the temperature, when the dislocation density is increasing, the moving dislocations will get interlocked each other. How it is getting interlocked? Because the whole system is getting lot of what we say dislocation. Number of dislocations or the dislocation density inside the material is getting enhanced in a such a way that one dislocation will try to hinder or will try to block the moment of another dislocation, such a way that in a material from different regions the different dislocations are getting interlocked. So when we are applying an external force, when we are trying to deform it plastically, so material will try to deform in one direction, but what will happen is the dislocation in that direction is getting blocked by the dislocation in another direction. Okay. In such a way, the dislocation density, when it is increased, the moment of dislocation is getting restricted or it is decreasing, which means the mobility of the dislocation is reduced. So in such a way, we can say the interlocking will be taking place among the different dislocation. This will prevent the dislocation movement, and as a result, when the dislocation moment is restricted, what will happen? Automatically the moment of atoms will be restricted, which means the plasticity is reduced, which means strength of the material is increased. This is how the dislocation density is related to the strength of the material. As the dislocation density is increased, the more dislocation will be present in the material, which will result in interlocking of the moment of dislocations, and as a result strength of the material is getting increased. Next is another important term, which is the strengthening mechanism in the nanomaterials. So this is one very important term in when we are considering the strength of any materials. So which is, we already discussed the Hall-Pitch equations or the Hall-Pitch relation, as the strength of the material or the yield strength of the material is directly it is inversely proportional to the root of diameter, or it proportional to 1 by root d. Okay. We know by the Hall-Pitch relation, as the, which actually means as the size of the grains are decreasing or it is getting nano sized, but actually is the strength of the material is getting enhanced. So when we are comparing the other strengthening mechanism, like one is the strain hardening, which we very recently discussed, or any other strengthening mechanisms like solid solution formation, reducing the size of the material or making the material nano sized or nano crystalline sized, it will having a greater effect when compared to other strengthening mechanism. So strengthening by making nanomaterial or strengthening by grain size reduction is one of the well important feature of improving the yield strength of the material. Obviously the ductility is getting compromised, so as the grain size decreases, the yield strength is increasing, at the same time ductility of the material is decreasing. So strength of the nanomaterials is very high when compared to the macros grained or the intermediate grain material. So nanomaterials are having very good strength because of its reduced grain size. Okay, thank you.